So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending where you're from. Today is the first of a four-part series of our virtual summit for webinar. And this morning, we're going to talk about next generation technology powering broadcast workflows. So before we get started with the webinar, just a few little logistics to keep in mind. You should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation on the left of your screen and see our lovely faces on the right of your screen. And if you don't see us, make sure to go into the view options on the top of your screen and select the side-by-side mode. And a couple other things is that we're also going to have some opportunity for you to ask questions live during the webinar at any time using the Q&A tool. So we have a Q&A tool on the bottom of it should appear in the bottom of your screen. Please use that at any time to ask your questions. Even while we're presenting, we have a couple of our technology experts on hand who will be there to answer your questions in real time. We'll get to some of your questions at the end as well, but feel free to ask your questions at any time. And we're also going to be, there's also a chat link. Now, we're not going to be using that for chat, but we are going to be providing links in that chat link below. So anytime when I'm talking about a data sheet that you can download or a blog post that you can read, we'll include a link to that in the chat. We're also going to run a couple of live polls just to get your opinion on a couple of topics during the webinar. So I'd encourage you to participate in that, and that should have we should get some interesting results from that as well. So my name is Mark Horchler. I am the Marketing Director of Products and Solutions here at Haivision, and I am joined by two of my highly esteemed colleagues, Ghislain Collette, who is our VP of Product Management here in our Montreal office. Welcome, Ghislain.
Hey, thanks, Mark.
And all the way across the Atlantic, we have Sviatko Huck, who is based in London, and he's a Senior Product Manager looking after our cloud solutions. Welcome, Sviatko.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, guys.
So just a quick run through of today's agenda. So first, we're going to look at some of the broadcast trends, and we're going to look at how those are affecting different use cases. There's a lot of different changes happening in our industry right now. We're going to look at how these are affecting different types of workflows. And then we're also going to have a look. Sviatko is going to take us through Haivision Hub, give us a quick overview, and also show us some of the new features of Haivision Hub. And then I'll ask Ghislain to take us through Makito X4 and tell us about what's currently available, as well as some of the upcoming new features. So some exciting things there for the Makito X4. And another thing during the webinar, where I am going to ask all of you to, if you can participate in this exciting and should be fun audience participation challenge, which I'll explain to you in a second. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So the audience participation challenge, name that SRT streams. This should be a fun thing for all of us to do. But in order to participate in this challenge, so towards the end of the webinar, we will have a challenge for you. But you will need to install the Haivision Play Pro app. I know many of you are already using this app. It's a totally free app, and it allows you to access SRT streams from any type of iOS phone or an Android device. So to download that app, you can use one of these QR codes, depending on whether you have an Android phone or an iPhone. And alternatively, you can also go and chat, and we'll provide links for the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. So go ahead and download the app, and then you'll need the Play Pro app later on in the webinar to participate in this fun challenge and get an opportunity to win a really cool t-shirt. So let's first take a look at some of the key trends in the broadcast industry today. So remote production, of course, is something that's been around for a couple of years. It started with the kind of REMI and at-home models, and it's been evolving and growing. And we see a lot of broadcast customers who are applying remote production or REMI type models, where you have a lot of the production workflow elements in the staff in a central location, but and bringing in multiple streams from a remote venue to a central location. Now that central location is also changing, and we'll talk about that in a second. But remote production is a growing trend, and with our Haivision Makito products supporting multi-camera stream sync over internet is becoming very, very useful. And remote production can also encompass scenarios where you have something produced in a studio with commentators, but you're bringing in external broadcast contribution stream. And then the other big trend in the broadcast industry is the transformation to IP. Everything is going IP, whether it's SRT or SMPTE 2110 and so on. Lots of different aspects of workflows are moving to IP, so we'll talk about that, and also the transformation of cloud. So clouds being used increasingly for things like video routing, for live broadcast contribution, and for remote operations. So we'll talk about that as well. And finally, this is something that's come about recently. It's been pushed because of the situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic. More people are working from home, so there's an increased need for supporting distributed workflows where the production staff, even if you're applying a remote production REMI type model to your live broadcast productions, you're decentralizing your production staff and with enabling people working from home or working from remote areas to collaborate. So let's take a look at one of the first use cases, remote production. So this is the classic, this is the traditional way of doing it from point to point over the internet. And Ghislain, can you talk us through how this is evolving over time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, remote production has been around for quite some time. And as you mentioned, right, people have been using either like a private network or the public internet to do like premise to premise type of remote production, multi-channel synchronization, whether it's just like 2 cameras or sometimes like tens of video feeds in the audio tracks. But what we see is a shift where moving from premise to premise, but actually where there's some transformation as well. Where people do remote production to save cost and be more efficient, but actually also to increase the distance between where the venue is and where the production is happening. And then for that, like people would be using because managed services could be fairly expensive, they would be using the cloud and public internet to orchestrate. So. And that's why we introduced the Haivision Hub actually before is to be able to orchestrate streams, cloud routing, and stream routing over the Azure backbone between sources and destinations, regardless of the distance, right? So to provide always like a super high quality type of streaming from encoders to decoders. Another thing that we see also within the industry is actually, since the cloud becomes involved more and more for the routing of the streaming and for the traffic, is actually to do production natively in the cloud. So the same capabilities that you have in hardware, where you can synchronize multi-feeds and multi-audio tracks, you can actually achieve the same thing in the cloud now, thanks to a number of partners like Grass Valley, Easy Live, Grabio, Kizwi, and many others. So the venue remains with an encoder, multi-channel, and then you can actually use the internet or a hybrid network. Part of it could be managed, part of it could be more public open internet, and then do the synchronization in the production in the cloud. Actually, there's been I think it's about a month ago that we did also a public webinar with Grass Valley showing the capabilities and benefits of that kind of solution in there.
So another use case is post-production review or over the shoulder. And can you talk us through the traditional way of doing this and how this is also changing?
Yeah, so there's been, before the pandemic, there's been some early adopters who understood and they really had the foresight to say, okay, we want to be very efficient and, for their, respective customers and partners. So for quite some time, people have been using our gear to do dailies, to do post-production reviews over the shoulder. But it was still kind of marginal, I would say. And since the beginning of the pandemic, what we've seen is obviously people who didn't move toward some sort of an IP infrastructure, very decentralized, like people to continue operating, they had to make a move, right? And this is exactly the solution that we have been offering is again, encoders, gateways in the cloud, or again, on premise or in a DMZ with professional hardware decoders, for the remote editor because of like the extreme low latency capabilities. But then for the remote collaborators, remote reviewers, directors that are not necessarily interacting with the content or more like providing feedback and asking questions and again, like just to be able to interact with the editor as opposed to interact with the content itself. We have the flexibility of the device that the content will be viewed on is key here, and this is exactly what we're offering, where you have set-top boxes, you have low latency to the browser, you have mobile low latency to mobile device, and low latency to set-top box as well. So we're pretty well equipped to provide solutions to partners who actually want to provide like a service to their own customers to reach the reviewers wherever they are. And the next step to this workflow is actually to use the content or have the content and the tools to do the edits instead of being on a like high grade servers on a facility, right? Like you move that to the cloud. And as I said, like we, similar to what we did actually with Grass Valley about a month ago, we did also another webinar with the Avid team for the Media Composer, where actually you can do your edit in the cloud and then stream to a vast audience, well, vast, like to the people involved within the review process and over the shoulder review, just to be able to have low latency and reach out people wherever they are, whether they're at home, on the road, or within the office.
And if you want to find out more about how Avid customers are using Haivision Makitos, there's a link to the blog post, and you can also watch the webinar.
Indeed.
And so the other use case we're looking at is broadcast monitoring. So I understand, Gislain, this is when a broadcaster wants to monitor different channels, whether it's competing channels or whether it's their own own sources. And they're traditionally using coaxial cable. And how is this also changing?
Well, so, I mean, just for the record, like we've been doing IPTV and broadcast monitoring for more than a decade, actually. So, but it was very, I would say like classic cookie cutter where it's, okay, everybody is within a large facility, exceptionally sometimes within a few connected facilities. Where there's like hundreds of channels, in-house channels, some of them also like competing channels, let's say, and that where internal viewers need to keep an eye on. So historically, we've seen a lot of coax. Again, like people who typically kind of like decide to update their infrastructure, tied to moving to a new building or expanding the facility, adding a new wing perhaps to the facility. So we see a lot of transition, obviously from RF, which is becoming probably more an exception than the rule now, and moving toward IP. But the big shift that we see, and again we've been offering this for some time, but it's more and more used now, is the decentralized aspect of it. So before the pandemic, we've got thousands of viewers, right, that were within the facility watching, content and, having different lineups based on their privileges and so on. So the product that we're talking about here are transcoders, sometimes encoders, depending on the format that the content is available at the source. And then the HMP, Haivision Media Platform, and the Haivision Media Gateway to be able to manage, authenticate, and secure the distribution within the facility. But again, because of the pandemic, where we see more and more people working from home, either part-time or full-time, those people need to continue doing their job, right? And so again, same infrastructure as the previous use case, where you can reach people with professional decoders, set-top boxes, mobile device, with the browser also that they have loaded on their computer. We can achieve low latency and reach people wherever they are in a secure fashion.
Okay, thanks for that, Gislain. That's very interesting. We see how IP and the people working from home and is changing lots of different types of workflows. So before we get to the next section, I just have a very quick poll question for you. Are you using the internet for live contribution? Be interesting to see what your answers are here. And let some of the answers come in, but I can see that a majority of you are using the internet for live contribution. So that's, like, there's a number of reasons why. Obviously, it's, it's ubiquitous. It's a lot cheaper than using fiber or satellite. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to use internet. Some of you might not be using internet, and maybe it's because of there are other considerations to take into consideration. And so this is where the Haivision Hub comes in. So Haivision Hub is a way to route video or from one location to the other using the cloud. So Sviatko, can you tell us a little bit more about Haivision Hub for those of us less familiar with it, and then maybe take us through some of the new features that we recently introduced?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so Haivision Hub is our platform as a service offering and allows the broadcasters to route live IP video content to and from anywhere in the world, really, utilizing both internet and Azure's network backbone. So Hub supports all major contribution and distribution video protocols, and as well as delivery to major social and media networks like Facebook, YouTube, you name it. So in addition to all this, we also have the existing users are already able to pair, control, and create routes from their Makito encoders via Azure and using SRT protocol. Sort of the highlights really for the Hub is it's really simple to use. You have your inputs, your outputs, your processing, and what we call hublets. So those elements you can build quickly, easy point and click route building. You're able to modify, to edit your route on the fly once it's running. It allows quick connection, as I mentioned, to different third-party services, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. The cool thing is definitely having the ability to transcode and compress your video depending on your requirements, and groom for a CDN delivery, etc. And it's because it's in the cloud, we don't, and it's a managed service. We manage all the containers, VM creations. I mean, you name it. This is all taken care of. You really need to just concentrate on the workflows that you're building for broadcast.
And so, if you want to find out more about Haivision Hub, we are providing a link to the data sheet as well. Now, Sviatko, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the new features in Haivision Hub?
Absolutely. So yeah, one of the latest additions is our preview thumbnails. So up until now, you were able just to create the routes. Now we're added the ability to preview exactly what's coming in, what's being processed, what's coming out of your routes, of your workflow. So it really simplifies and helps for any sort of confidence monitoring. You're not going to be. It's a lot sort of easier to make sure that the right content is coming through your workflow, really. And that's been a big ask from our customers, and we managed to get that in.
And the preview thumbnails work for every type of hublet?
That's correct. That's correct. So one of the next one that we have is the ability to actually modify the routes on the fly by adding and removing output hublets. Right, so you may need to have to send the stream additionally for another reviewer, right, for another editor, or for a test location. You can simply, without stopping the whole route and affect the whole everyone else on that route, you can easily add a hublet, whether it's SRT or any other that's available from the list. Edit, start it, confirm that it's working, get it delivered, and then once done with whatever the test requirement, for example, there is, you can actually remove that hublet without affecting any of the existing outputs on that route.
So if I have a video route that's already running and I want to share, add additional output, just maybe share with a colleague or something, I can just do that without stopping the route.
Correct.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So this is available now with Hub. As we know, Hub is a cloud-based solution, so we're continually adding new features to Haivision Hub. And so while we're at it, Sviatko, I was wondering if you could maybe give us a little sneak preview as to what's coming up next.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, Mark. So yeah, a little sneak preview for us is the addition of our Hub Appliance Manager. So as I did mention, some of the existing customers already can manage their appliances, Makito appliances. So we're doing a complete overhaul here. We're adding quite a lot more functionality. You'll be able to pair your Makito appliances to the Hub and be able to get a lot more information about the firmware versions, the amount of streams running, the active, idle. So we'll be able to filter, search for those appliances. You can see different states. You can also, you'll also be able to sort by type, appliance name, IP addresses. I mean, you name it. There's loads of interaction there. You'll be able to restart, unpair, as well as pair the appliances. So quickly copy the pairing codes, paste it into your Makito appliance, and you're pretty much paired with a Hub and be able to control that. So as a part of the control and configuration, that's quite a big change in there, is that you'll be able to actually create, very similar to what you would do on a local appliances page, a web page. You'll be able to configure your video encoding settings, your audio encoding, your inputs, and also be able to create the stream directly from the Hub, from centralized location. You'll be able to stop start. You can see the streams, see available streams running, whether they're created automatically by the Hub or whether they're manually created from here. All of those streams will be there. And of course, creating and configuring the new stream with all familiar video, audio, and protocol settings that you're used to on your Makito appliances at the moment. So same goes for the encoder as well as for decoder, which means that on the decoder side, again, you can configure your output settings for the SDI outputs, can change and check the stream, configure the streams that you want to be receiving directly from your encoder. Again, all very familiar to the local web UI. And with this, you're able essentially to create a direct stream from your encoder to a decoder without accessing, a couple of different devices, all from a centralized location from one place from the Hub. And that's our Hub Appliance Manager.
Wow, that sounds pretty exciting, Sviatko. So if I understood correctly, with this, once this is available with Haivision Hub, you'll be able to create streams that are routed through the cloud or directly over the internet, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Pleasure.
And if you want to find out more about Haivision Hub or you want to find out when this new feature is available, feel free to get in touch with us. Now, before we get to the next section, just a quick poll question. Just curious, what video technologies are you currently using? HEVC, HDR, 4K? Let's give it a couple of seconds to see some of the results coming in. We see that a majority of our viewers are using HEVC currently, and about a third are using HDR, and 4K is becoming increasingly important. So, and there we go. So yeah, so interesting to see that mix. HEVC seems to be a very, very widely used. HDR and 4K is coming up as well. And so this just so happens to be all technologies that Haivision Makito X4 supports. So I was wondering if Ghislain, you can talk us through the Makito X4, tell us about some of the features, existing features for the Makito X4, and maybe show us some of the new features as well.
Yeah, sure. And actually, just the result of the polling was actually quite interesting. It's a lot of those new technologies are being used with a pretty large percentage, which is a good sign, because all of these are supported by the X4 one way or another. So just to continue along the same line that you were saying, Mark. So the X4 encoder has been launched 3 years now, probably 2-3 years ago. So it's programmable hardware. So that's the key part here. So it's still a brand new platform, heavily programmable. So it's just the beginning of the features that we've been adopting a pretty steady cadence of introducing new features, and this is just the beginning. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned. But the plan with the X4 was to allow transition toward, let's say, legacy technologies like SDI, HD, and then without having to replace the hardware, to move toward newer workflows. So support 4K UHD, support HEVC, more IP-based workflows. So there's a lot of new features, right, that have been added, but like the core of those, the features that for the platform, both on the encode and decode side, is really the low latency, the high density, the vast range of protocols and interfaces that we support, and the fact that there's a lot of granularity in terms of picture quality, latency, and other settings that you can have within the encode decode. We added like size-based encoding and decoding recently, for instance, just to be able to speed up the encoding latency and send traffic over the network. Recently, we added the HDR, so I think that's that one deserves to dive a little bit more deeper into what this means. So again, this is a complete end-to-end workflow for HDR. So on the encode side, it starts by detecting the HDR format that the source contains. So that's also known as SMPTE 352 payload ID. So we can detect what is the HDR format using that ID. If the source contains some. And then there's this automatic mode where whatever comes in goes out, over the stream, and then the decoder will effectively reinsert that format on the SDI output. For different reasons, a lot of the sources are not supporting this payload ID signaling, so we can actually overwrite or manually insert the information about what kind of HDR is supported. So we do support SDR, so 709, but we also do support HLG, PQ, both with the wide color gamut as well. And so you can effectively, within the encoder, you can manually tag the stream with the kind of HDR. So it's going to overwrite whatever has been detected if there was any detection. And then the decoder will also the decoder has the same functionality where it can output whatever comes in, or it can be overwritten manually and say, okay, I want if it's for XYZ reason you're receiving from a third-party encoder and it's perhaps not the right HDR signaling, then it can be overwritten at the decoder level to tell the monitor, the display, what is the right HDR to use. So it's very, very convenient. We got very good feedback from the people who have been using this on the decoder. This came out about a couple of months ago.
So again, it's supported on both the encoder and the decoder.
Exactly. It's a complete end-to-end workflow.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about you just mentioned the recent update to the Makito X4 decoder? Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. And perhaps just one last point about HDR. Just there's a misconception that the HDR is only with 4K, right? So we do HDR not only with 4K, but we do it with HD as well. So just something to remember for the audience. Part of the decoder release that we did a couple of months ago, introducing HDR. We also, part of the new UI that we introduced, about a year ago, is we added a thumbnail similar to what Zviadko was describing within Hub for confidence. So the same concept applies here. So each decoder channel will provide within the UI a thumbnail. So regardless of the stream coming in, whether it's 4K UHD, whether it's HD, interlaced, non-interlaced, whether it's HEVC 264. So it gives the operator confidence and the ability to better troubleshoot in case there's something wrong happening. So the thumbnail's purpose is really to display what the decoder is receiving and outputting on a per channel basis.
Great, thank you, Ghislain. So before we get to, I think you have more to tell us about the Makito X4. Before we get to that, I want to invite all of you to participate in that Name That SRT Stream Challenge. So this should be fun. Gislain has set up a stream, some video content that's being encoded in real time with a Makito X4. And then that's being streamed as an SRT stream up into to an SRT gateway in the cloud. And so what we like you to do is, if you have Haivision Play Pro installed on your iPhone or your Android phone, that we're inviting you to try to access that stream. And the first one of you to type the words that you see into the Q&A section of the Zoom chat here will win a lovely t-shirt. And we can never have too many t-shirts, so I think this is a great opportunity. And I'm going to share the QR code in a second, and as soon as it appears, you can scan the QR code, and the first one to answer correctly will win a great Haivision t-shirt. So here it is. You cannot participate because I believe you already have a couple t-shirts. So here we go. I see we get some answers coming in. Okay, should be able to view that stream correctly. And I think we have a winner and a couple runners up as well. So for those of you who didn't see or didn't have time to view the stream, this is what you should be seeing: SMPTE ST2110. So I think, Gislain, this is a hint as to what we're going to talk about next.
Indeed. So I mean, effectively, the stream that you're getting is from an encoder. An X4 encoder has been upgraded to run a beta version of the software that is still being developed and tested. So it's the known X4, and in addition to the SDI, you have we lit up in a couple of releases ago the second network interface for where you can do redundancy and so on. So now we're leveraging this 10 gig interface, SFP, to do 2110 input. So this is just a sneak peek of the user interface. It's still work in progress, but you choose your input, you choose the essence, right? The multicast, where that traffic is, the port number. There's also an RTP payload, which is typically required. And then, so that tells the encoder where to tune to get the content. We do support uncompressed video, AES-67 audio, obviously PTP, and classic standard metadata like timecode, closed captioning, KLV, and HDR. To actually, it's really just a replacement of the SDI, because from a front end point of view, everything else after, the way you encode all the settings, the performance, the streaming protocol, everything else remain the same, right? So it's really an alternative to SDI as an input, and then everything else is everything that you've known, right? The X4, from a configuration and performance point of view.
So Gislain, I think this is maybe a good example of how this can be used. I know we have a couple of customers that are, equipping new OB vans or OB trucks with SMPTE 2110 gear, and this can be used in that scenario. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're involved in a number of projects where we see people, migrating their production truck from SDI to IP. So the beauty, again, I was talking before about the programmable hardware capability of the X4 platform. So you can effectively use the X4 and migrate from SDI to 2110 with just an upgrade, effectively, without having to replace the whole encoding infrastructure altogether. And so now you can have like a pretty compact, kind of a full IP infrastructure within a mobile truck. Could be within a facility, but we see a little bit more adoption within, like updated mobile truck. And then that gives you the ability to migrate at your own rhythm, and not only from an encode point of view, but also from a decode point of view. So you could have like a full hybrid network where the encoder is receiving 2110, outputting 264 HEVC over SRT, and then to a decoder that would output SDI, right? There's no traces of that 2110 traveling over the network. So you could have like full hybrid network and upgrade any part of the workflow at the rhythm that is required by the parties involved. And obviously the ability to do synchronization and so on, like that is all maintained.
So you can still have multiple, HD cameras into a single Makito X4 decoder, and you can still use.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Great. So that's pretty much the end of our presentation for today. Before we get to Q&A, I just want to tell you a little bit about, well, first of all, I want to plug our Haivision Broadcast IP Transformation Report. The second one came out a few months ago with a 2021, and we're actually already starting to work on the 2022 survey. Some of you might be looking forward to 2022, as I am, and so we're already getting started on next year. So you should be getting an email shortly asking you to participate in the survey. We really appreciate your feedback, because so far the response have been great, and have been very, very insightful, the feedback and the information that we've had from the past 2 surveys. And if you participate, you get a chance to win an iPhone 13. Even if you won last year, you can upgrade from your iPhone 12 from last year to an iPhone 13. So there's no reason not to participate. So keep your eyes out for that. And again, just to summarize what we talked about today, we covered Haivision Hub and how it's we're introducing more agility to Haivision Hub and greater visibility of different routes and devices, and it got a lot of exciting new features coming up for Haivision Hub. We talked about the Makito X4, of course, the encoder and the decoder, how it can be used for end-to-end low latency HDR contribution in HD and in 4K. And finally, we talked about SMPTE 2110. We're planning to introduce it shortly for the Makito X4 to be able to use SMPTE 2110 inputs for the Makito and sending that over in HVC or H.264 with over SRT. So there you go. And if you have any more questions for us, any questions about any of the particular things we talked about, I'd invite you to please get in touch with us at sales@haivision.com. We also have a poll up. You can also just answer the poll, and we won't share the results of that one, but we will get in touch with you if you're interested in us to get back in touch with you. So we have a couple, this is the first part of a 4-part series of webinars. The next one's coming up on Thursday for the House of Worship market. We have 2 more next week for the enterprise markets and the defense video workflows. So I invite you to participate in those. But I'd really like to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been a great webinar, and hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Mark, and see how it goes.
Thanks, guys.